You?
Yeah, all right. We're in Salt Lake City, actually at Deer Valley in Utah.
Oh, nice. A little early for skiing, but
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. I've got here with me Dave Bortz, VP of Engineering at FOSSA, one of our customers at Grepr, and I'm Jad Naous, CEO of Grepr. Maybe I can start telling you a bit about what we're going to be talking about, and I'll let Dave introduce himself. We'll ask some questions. I'm actually currently right now in Utah. I'm at the A16Z conference. For the infrastructure team, they have it at Deer Valley. This is their first one, which was really fun. So maybe we can get started. Dave, I'd love to learn a bit about you. Maybe tell us a bit about what FOSSA does, and I'm happy to kind of then talk a little bit about us and Grepr and kind of how we found each other and moved forward.
sounds great. Appreciate it. And unfortunately, I'm not in anywhere near as exciting as Deer Valley. I'm in suburban Chicago right now, but it'll do for today. And so, yeah, I'm Dave. The way I usually describe my role at FOSSA is VP of Engineering. FOSSA, I guess the way I describe my own personal background is for about the last decade, have been doing the kind of, I call it the Series A through D VC-backed tech startup engineering department leadership role, and kind of enjoy that role. I always tell people I like to join a company when they've got a small group of smart people all running in different directions, and they've realized they need them all to run in the same direction, and kind of step in and create a little bit of process and the environment to do that. So that's me, and my background goes way back, and I remember like early days where most of the time if you needed to look for logs, you'd be like SSHing or maybe telnetting onto a production server, and like grepping through files, maybe get the IT team to set up syslog eventually or something. So I've been around for a while doing this, and since, of course, I've seen the progression of better and better tooling around that. I'll give you a quick overview of FOSSA. So FOSSA is what we would call a software composition analysis platform, primarily scanning source code, looking for third-party dependencies that were brought in and the kind of issues associated with them. But also we have scanners for containers, we have scanners for binaries. So it's a pretty broad platform offering that functionality, and kind of a focus on like best-in-class licensing, workflows and detections. But also security issues and quality issues and all that. So that's kind of my background and FOSSA's background in a nutshell.
So, and can you remind me, how long have you been at FOSSA again?
Oh, about 4 years at FOSSA, closing on a 4-year anniversary, I think, in January.
Okay, cool. Big milestone. 4 years.
I keep progressively having a little bit longer tenure as I go through jobs. So 5 years is my record right now, and we're gonna break that at FOSSA.
Nice. So just to go through the outline, we talked a bit about FOSSA, and Dave, I'd love to learn later a bit about some of the business challenges, why you ended up working with us at Grepr, how we helped. And then one question that we always hear from prospects or people who are considering working with Grepr, well, what is the impact on my engineering team? Is this going to be a problem for them? Are they able to deal with things? And this is kind of always top of mind for people when they think about changing anything related to observability.
Of course.
And then maybe go through some of your learnings and advice and how we kind of the impacts and the results. But just to give a quick overview of Grepr, Grepr is an observability data management platform. We call it an intelligent observability data engine. What we do is we can collect data from existing collecting agents. So if you're using Datadog, or if you're using New Relic, or if you're using Splunk, Sumo, OTel, collectors, whatever it is, and collecting the data and sending them to the vendor, we sit in the middle between these two elements, between the collectors and the vendors. we automatically figure out the patterns in your data. We automatically understand what's signal and what's noise, and we reduce that volume of data, compress it. Somebody today or yesterday called it semantic compression, meaning that we understand what's actually useful and what's not useful in the data. And we can send high signal data to the vendor. We put all the raw data into a data lake, and so nothing is actually ever lost. And if there's any issues or anybody wanted a particular message back or a particular set of logs, they can always go back to the data lake and fetch it. And they can configure and tune the system whichever way they want. And so everything that we've been doing is focused on making sure that we ultimately reduce impact and reduce the cost and risk of rolling out Grepr, but still get at least 80% cost reduction using Grepr. And so with that, I'd love to learn a bit about some of the challenges that you were facing and why you ended up reaching out to Grepr. And I asked you for that chart, so let me know when you want it. I'm happy to show it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, at a high level, I think I'm dealing with the same challenge that most engineering leaders are, which is like hosting cost reduction. Let's not spend more than we need to. And it's funny, as I was thinking about that this morning a little bit, I remembered. So I spent a few years working at Amazon in their earlier days, like 2006 and 2009. And when I had arrived there, they had just created like this new policy: hardware is free. Right? Like they had come to this conclusion: we're wasting way too much engineering time on, hosting cost reduction and hardware resource optimization. Just eat the costs and go fast. And 3 years later, by the time I had left to, move back to Chicago, completely reversed the policy. And it led to pretty extreme levels of inefficiency in resource utilization. So it is important. And I think, logging is a tricky one because it's always like a non-trivial cost, right? It's not so little that you can just ignore it, but it's also like not enough where it's often worth putting in a ton of engineering resources into it. And a lot of the approaches that you take to reduce logs are, lossy, and therefore lead to not, less granular logs. And when the actual issue comes up that you thought you just got rid of a bunch of noise, but it turned out like you had some signal in there that you got rid of also.
You need it. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
go ahead. Sorry. And it's always kind of a trade-off. Do you want your engineers to work on your business, or do you want them to work on reducing logs or kind of all this overhead stuff that first of all, no engineer actually wants to do. And so you kind of have to like force them and move them off of potentially revenue generating products or features, right?
Yeah, and like you got two choices, right? You can do the like, okay, we're going to go fine tooth comb and make sure we don't get rid of anything necessary, and that's like a very painful effort. It's expensive. It doesn't really reduce the logs all that much, and you have a morale issue for whoever you assign to that task. Or you do the like, machete style. We're just going to cut anything that looks like it might be, in our way. But then, of course, you have the like you've lost signal, and troubleshooting becomes more difficult. And of course, we found that like Grepr kind of offered a third option, which is nice, that you can, still have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. You have all of your logs, but you've also reduced how much you're sending to the service. And so you've reduced your costs without like really losing any functionality. And so, yeah, so I mean, I was kind of, I guess I would say log expenses were always something that were like kind of a little bit of a thorn in my side, but never like quite something I was going to proactively go create a project for.
Or your CEO was just like continuously.
Yeah, just hey, anyway, we can. When's the last time you looked at hosting costs? How much we spend on Datadog every month? That kind of thing. But it was also our CEO who connected me with Grepr, and had the relationship, and said, hey, I think there's this service that might be a little interesting to us. And I said, absolutely. So I took a call with Jad, and we kind of talked through the product, and I'm like, this seems like a no-brainer to give a try, and have had pretty great success since then.
Yeah. So before Grepr, this is kind of what your last year looked like, right? It looks like you kind of were increasing. You were on a steady rate. You kind of doubled and almost doubled, maybe 1.5x the volume of logs over that year.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and it seems like you were continuously gonna keep having to push that as the business grows. And then you deployed Grepr, and this is kind of what happened relatively immediately. I think around the July area, we had probably added a bunch of exceptions, or I don't remember what happened here, but pretty much immediately your volume went down.
Yes. Yeah,
And
you
I
can
think
even see we crept up pretty high early in the year. We were definitely growing, and like, you know, you do little things where you've realized you've got some sort of like error state that's logging a lot of noise, and then you fix the error and that drops logs a bunch. So that's why you kind of have some of these ups and downs. But yeah, I mean, the big drop off is when we implemented Grepr. And so now our logs go to Grepr. You know, a small sampling of them still go to Datadog. And our costs have been, you know, significantly reduced with, you know, very little effort or pain on our side.
Yeah, so you went from maybe about 350, 360 to about 60 million indexed messages, and then also kind of a commensurate reduction on the ingestion side. I believe you probably still have some logs going straight into Datadog outside of Grepr, probably.
Yep.
But kind of on our end, what we see is you've been able to cut down your the number of messages that are going through to Datadog by over 90% pretty consistently. And so that has been a massive kind of reduction that was relatively cheap. I'm curious, maybe we can talk a little bit about what that deployment looked like for you. Like, I know as an engineering leader, you weren't the one going in and hooking things up and plugging it. But I'm curious, kind of, what did you hear from the team? Maybe you didn't hear anything and it was just fine, which is great. So I'd love to hear maybe a bit about what that deployment looked like for you, kind of from that side, from your side. How were you thinking about it? How were you scheduling it, the resourcing, how much time it took? How were you thinking about the risk and reward and so on?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a relatively easy implementation. So we just sort of found the first open window, which wasn't, you know, too far out. We had kind of a newly created SRE team at the time. And so there was finally a little bit of capacity for things like this that was actually dedicated, as opposed to some of the past where it was like, hey, we just need like an engineer who's got a little bit of infra experience to, like, you know, kind of jump into something. So we had the capacity to do it. It felt like something that wasn't going to take more than a week to implement, and it did not. I don't have the details. I pinged the people who were involved in the implementation, and they said, you know, they had a couple questions for Grepr as we went along. And bear in mind, this was quite a while ago. You guys were pretty early at the time, but, you know, small issues that we needed to kind of, you know, go back and forth with for a few minutes, and then we got through them, and we were up and running within a week.
Great. And how has the reaction been from the engineering team? I'm curious. Have they complained a lot? Had issues? What
I mean, it's really been pretty kind of a non-event for most engineers. So we did a little overview, right? The SRE lead kind of gave the rest of the developers an overview of, hey, here's how our logs are flowing now, and here's what is going into Datadog, and here's what isn't. And if you do need additional data to get backfilled in, here's how you do it. And so day to day, I mean, I think the majority of issues that need to be kind of troubleshooted with logs are something where maybe you've deployed something new that's causing a problem, and all of a sudden it shows up in the logs repeatedly, and the samples that Grepr is letting through Datadog indicate those, and we just fix the bug, and it's, you know, it really didn't matter that we were using Grepr or not. And occasionally we get into something where there's a specific, right, this particular customer did this particular thing, or this build had a particular issue. We really want to kind of like make sure we find that build, and it might not have, you know, been in the samples that were sent over, and then we just find the time range and we backfill it, and that's worked pretty seamlessly for us every time we've had to use that.
So it sounds like for the most part things were deployed and they're currently running smoothly, not hearing complaints. Doesn't seem like your risk has increased or your exposure has increased significantly. I'm curious, a few days ago there was that big Amazon outage in the morning. I'm curious, are you guys in US East 1 also?
I do not believe we are in US East 1, so mostly it kind of missed us. But yeah, it was we generally escaped pretty unscathed, and so there was a little bit of noise about it in Slack here and there, but nothing that escalated up to my level. So.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, we've had a lot of customers who also went down. Actually, if you were using Datadog's US East 1 deployment, you were probably offline. And I think you guys are using US East 1 for Datadog.
That's probably correct for
And it was
Datadog.
it was pretty interesting to see kind of how the entire landscape shifted. But we had a comment from another customer who said basically, you guys were up faster than anybody else. Like, we were the first service that was back up
and running.
I was curious to see this. Yeah. Great. Well, I'm curious kind of how you think about what's next for you guys on the operational side and observability. Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're now starting to consider and think about next?
I mean, I've got a variety of things that we look at, and some of them are kind of outside of the scope of what we're talking about here, right? I'd love improved what I would call on-prem telemetry data and observability data, and we have a couple different flavors of how we deploy things to our customers' environments. A couple of our customers run a full FOSSA instance on premise, which is not really what I'm talking about. And we also have a bunch of customers who, in fact, almost all of our customers use either our primary CLI or some of the kind of secondary command line tools that we distribute to them for doing their scans. And then, the kind of data makes it back up to FOSSA. And so when things are successful, it's great. We have, good comprehensive data, know what happened. When things don't go well, sometimes we don't have as much visibility into those things as I'd like to. So that'd be one area I'd love to kind of improve. From a kind of Datadog optimization standpoint, we actually did have another kind of recent improvement where we sort of right-sized a lot of our Kubernetes clusters and realized we had like a lot of nodes that were not doing a whole lot and were costing us both at AWS and in Datadog, and so we've reduced that. But we've also been talking with you all about some of the kind of host monitoring, kind of sampling approaches that Grepr, may be working on or already have. And so we'd love to kind of look into that stuff as it becomes available. And, other than that, I've got some, sort of new services that I need to deploy and whatnot, kind of from an infrastructure standpoint, but I don't think that's particularly interesting from nothing unique from the observability end.
Good. Sorry, I just got an alarm from my company. My cleaners just went into the house, and then today is Thursday, right? Yeah,
it is.
All right. Anyway,
you gotta send them a one-time code to get into your front door. I realized I learned my front door lock has one-time codes that you can like generate on the fly and sort of like an OTP for your front door.
Yeah, no, these guys were they're just the cleaners, and I guess my wife set the alarm in. Anyway, great. Well, in terms of some of the things that we're actually planning, we're about to announce our trace product, as you had mentioned. I'd love to kind of work with you guys and see how that goes and whether we can improve. I think, some of the things that we're going to be doing and kind of how we describe it is really unique in terms of how we process traces in a way that basically hasn't been done before. That allows us to significantly reduce the sampling rate while still maintaining full coverage for all the data that you're going to need. Well, anything else that you'd like to talk about, Dave? Anything else we should discuss for today?
I mean, I think that kind of covers it. The way I describe it is it wasn't like an extreme pain point that I had. It was a minor pain, but the solution was so easy and seamless that I just feel like I got like it solved for free, right? It just sort of it fell into my lap. We spent a week setting it up, and now I just spend less on my log.
It's just working.
So, yeah, I mean, that's really kind of how it's been. It's just worked, and it was. Frankly, it was the kind of pain that like if it didn't just work, it might not have been worth pursuing, but because it did, it's been great. So I've been very happy, and I'm excited to try your next iteration of product, and so looking forward to it all.
Well, I appreciate it, Dave. Thanks so much for taking the time and joining me on the call this morning. And if for any of our viewers, if you'd like to get started with Grepr, it's really easy. Just get signed up on our website at app.grepr.ai/signup, or feel free to reach out to us at our contact page on grepr.ai/contact. It takes 30 minutes to get started. You just point your existing agents to Grepr, and it works immediately. Happy to connect with you and learn a bit about your problems and what you'd like to see. Dave, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Again. Yeah. Take care.
Thanks. You too.